like Piers Morgan, for example, got cancelled from his show because he would not apologize, he would not capitulate.
Well,
I don't agree with that.
Piers Morgan quit.
He did quit, but he got cancelled from his show in that his producer said he had to apologize. He said, well, I won't do it. So if it comes down to an ultimatum of apologize or leave, you choose to leave, sure.
Yeah, but I wouldn't call that being cancelled. And the reason why it's important is because this brings me on to why I say what I'm saying, which is if one believes something exists, like there's this, for instance, oddly enough, I think some on the right believe there's this structural pathology of cancellation that happens in the mainstream media circles because it's all left wing. They put it this way: I know some folks who are uber right wing who actually believe in structural forces more than they think they do. Because they believe there's this structural force, this liberal hegemony that controls the media, that cancels everyone who doesn't have the right perspective, so to speak. And because they believe that, whatever issue happens, no matter how nuanced it is, I think sometimes people see that issue through the prism of, oh, this is another person being cancelled. Because take Piers Morgan, and maybe it's not the best example. I get your point that he was given an ultimatum, and we're only told what he relayed to us. That's another thing to be aware of. We don't know all the moving parts of the story. But ultimately, irrespective of the ultimatum he was given, he chose to walk away from the show. So to say that's kind of part of the pathology or the kind of, the reoccurring theme, leitmotif we see in the mainstream media, people being cancelled, well, it's not really though, is it?
Oh, it is. That's exactly what cancelled is. I think you're mischaracterizing what.
Sorry about that.
Because no, it's fine, because it's not structural. To be cancelled means you're shutting down the debate or someone is losing their job. It's not a case of there's this system set out against us to put us down. I've never heard anyone talk like that. When I'm against culture, I'm talking about people losing their livelihoods or their opinion being shut down because it's not the approved one. It's not the one that people want to hear. And in this instance, he chose to walk away. It doesn't mean he wasn't cancelled. Of course, it's not down to whether someone chooses to leave their job or not. It's a case of, is their voice being shut down? And his voice was literally shut down in that he said it, he voiced his opinion, and he was told he had to retract that or leave, and he chose to leave rather than retract his opinion. So that's to me what cancelling is. And that probably, so your explanation helps, because it probably, when I talk about cancel culture online, the people on the left who will jump into my feed will say, but XYZ wasn't cancelled, or cancel culture isn't a thing, and they probably perceive it in the way that you characterized it, which is not the way I perceive it.
Yeah, but to dwell on it more, because I want to understand exactly what you're saying and what you think cancel culture is and what shutdown it means as well. Because in the Piers Morgan piece, Good Morning Britain has sponsors. In fact, it so happens that one of their big sponsors, as you know or may know, was a mental health charity. He said he didn't believe in Meghan Markle's. He said I didn't believe a word of it, is what he said, which I think folks may have said, oh, that means mental health. I imagine as these things go, the producer or whatever EP comes and says, listen, no, our sponsor is thing. You can't say that. He goes back out after he apologizes. He says, that's not what I meant. He backtracked, right? And then eventually he quits. He says something, and because it's a show, audiences react and they complain. They go, we don't want this, right? Ultimately, the people who run the show, who have a profit motive, tell him that, hey, mate, what you're saying is cool. Look, we're having the most numbers of Ofcom complaints until Prince Philip dies. We're having the most amount of Ofcom complaints. We got to rectify this. He then ends up going, you know what? I'm not apologizing. I'm leaving. That sounds like capitalism working to me, more than I would say cancel culture or someone being canceled. I mean, it's capital. It's a private company. He chooses to withdraw his labor to go sell it somewhere else. It's capitalism. There's nothing to see here, is what I would say to that. But some would spin it into the narrative of, here's another right-wing or controversial polemic figure being cancelled by the really loud left and the vocal minority. But if you observe the story on its nuances, I don't think you could say that. So when you say shut down, I'm really curious as to what you mean by he was shut down.
And his stance was quite clear that he didn't believe a word that Meghan Markle was saying. Neither do I. And I've pointed out on Twitter and other networks how she lied, and or actual proven mistruths that she told. So I think it's a fair statement to make. He did go down the line that I wouldn't have touched about her mental health, because that's so subjective. But I don't know whether he was told to apologize because of a sponsor or not. I don't know the ins and outs of the case in that way. What I do know, he's managed to find 17 instances where she's lied or not told the truth in that documentary. Therefore, he was right to call her out on it. But to suggest that it's capitalism at play, I mean, that to me feels a bit it feels a bit sketchy, because it's a man who is known for having controversial opinions. He put one forward, it wasn't accepted. They asked him to remove it, and he declined, and therefore he's had to go elsewhere. That's, to me, that is just the epitome of cancellation.
Okay, fair enough. We might just see different on it, but it's important to note that it's a private company. He says something, and the people who own the company, essentially, I think I heard that Meghan Markle put a call in to the CEO or something like that of ITV. I don't quite remember the fact. And then they ask him to apologize. We don't know the story, but it strikes me as quite different to a situation where, say, a right-wing professor, who's been teaching something for years, suddenly has a group of people go to the board and go, a small group of people go to the board and say, we don't like what he's teaching, and he loses his job. And that strikes me as quite different from a man who speaks on multiple platforms, deciding not to no longer use one. It just strikes me as slightly different.
It is very different, yeah. If it's a professor who's lost his tenure because of a vocal minority, of course that's more severe. But cancellation doesn't mean you no longer have a voice at all. Like you can get cancelled from one publication, or you can get shut down from one outlet. But the thing that I worry about from what you just said is that it was a private company, because that's the thing I heard the most from the left. It's a private company. They can do what they like. It's a private company. They don't have to let you speak. And that is the most concerning, because when we look at what happened over Twitter, when they had that mass exodus, when they shut down so many voices from the right, including the sitting president of the United States of America,